Hello and welcome to another Things That Spark Joy video. So I was lucky enough to take a trip recently to the UK. First time I've managed to get back there since I think 2019, before COVID. So it was nice to have a chance to visit again. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. We managed to find a window of opportunity where the flights weren't too pricey. It's always tricky travelling to the UK and avoiding the holiday seasons and spring break and stuff like that, where prices can go up and it can be a bit of a nightmare travelling through the airport. So we went over there, and these three items represent three different parts of the trip. So two are purchases I made. One was a rediscovery of something I owned that I've shushed up a bit, I suppose is the technical term there. So let's go through the first item. I'll go through these chronologically. So when we arrived we arrived at Heathrow Airport, we had to get the Heathrow Express, and that, by the time we got into London, because they've slightly changed the flight times now from Nova Scotia, it was about, I suppose, 8-9 o'clock, and we were already aware that we'd be travelling that late at night. You have to be just mindful of how you want to travel. Obviously, if money's no object, then you can get taxis, but it's always, I always like to try and use public transport if I can, just to keep things within budget. And we needed to get down to Sussex, around where my parents live. But when I was planning the trip, it looked like it was best to just take a train down to Haywards Heath and then spend a night in Haywards Heath, and then the following day move over to closer to around the Uckfield area and stay at a hotel over there. So we spent a night in Haywards Heath, and then in the morning we wandered around Haywards Heath town centre, which is a really nice town centre, and I picked up this. I'm always interested in anything, any tools to help people learn, and one thing there is a lot of in the UK, because in the UK you have to make some pretty major decisions when you're 14 about where your career is going to go. Because from 14 to 16, when I was at school, you were studying for either O-levels or CSEs, depending on your abilities in a certain subject you picked. And then subsequently, it moved over to something called GCSEs, where they aggregated the two qualifications into one. And they're still GCSEs now, although they've tweaked them quite a bit over the years. But because of that, and the fact that there's not that many examination bodies, I think maybe around about 3, maybe slightly more for O-levels, there's all this standard revision study materials that you can just buy in WH Smith's and stations like that, or bookshops. And so I stumbled across these revision cards, which are very much like a high-end version of flashcards that you might produce yourself. And this is the one for computer science. So I'm going to do an unboxing for this. But it was an interesting thing for me, because it does remind me of how in the UK you've got kids at the age of 14 who're making pretty major decisions about their future careers. And obviously you can switch later on, but from 14 to 16 you're doing GCSEs, which is sort of setting you up to what you might do at A-level and then what you might potentially do at university. When I was at school, between the end of 70s into the early 80s, a lot more people left school at 16, went into the trades, went through maybe other, or just went straight out into a job. Whereas now, I'm assuming the majority of school leavers will do A-levels, or maybe go to a sixth form college, or maybe go to a trade college. because when I left school, generally what happened when you went into the trades, you took up an apprenticeship, and then the firm you worked for sort of paid for your tuition. And although I didn't do an apprenticeship, I left school when I was 16. I went into work in a lab, and it was a similar setup where the place I worked actually paid for me to do my ONC, my Ordinary National Certificate in Chemistry, and then my HNC in Biochemical Techniques, and that was all paid for. And I used to go for a day and an evening once a week, and then we had a ton of homework. And so the point I'm making here is that a lot of that stuff between 16 and 18 is incredibly standardized, and so it enables publishers to produce various booklets and this sort of thing, which are these question cards. So I'm going to do an unboxing of these in the future. Now the next item, so we went from one night in Haywards Heath to moving around the Upfield area, which is close to where my parents are and where I grew up, and we stayed at a hotel there. And while I was going through some old stuff at my parents' house, I stumbled across like a mug, and probably like a lot of people's houses, mugs that sometimes not in the cupboard with the other mugs, but sometimes a nice mug gets put on a shelf somewhere, and every so often just various random trinkets end up in there. You know what I'm talking about, like the odd interesting stone that someone found, or a key ring, and in this case I found the remnants of a watch I owned. So all that was really left was the central piece of the watch, and there was what remained of the plastic strap. Now anybody that owns any of these sort of Casios, either the digital watches or these ones, which is an analog quartz watch with the sort of strap I'm talking about, will know that often the straps don't last as long as the battery, and they just eventually degrade and snap. So this thing, when I found it, had what remained of the strap. So I literally I didn't even have to take the pins out here. It just literally, as I was holding it, I could feel it falling apart. There's no problem with the hard plastic they use here. It's just whatever material they're using for the straps, they just don't last. So yeah, I owned it originally. It just had got forgotten about, put into this little mug, and I figured when I get it back I'd open it up. It just has clips here and here. There's no great water resistance on this. You could probably wear it if you're washing the dishes, but that's about it. So these come off pretty easy. There's no screws. There's a couple of clips either side. They're just held in there by pinching really, and so I got that off fairly easy. There's a Sony battery in here. I've already got Sony batteries for other watches I own. Popped it in, just started up, and then I found a nice slim watch strap that I already owned, that I'd purchased actually to go on a manual wind, which isn't working at the moment, and but actually wasn't really suitable for it. I think we ended up with a different strap. And so this is nice and thin, and again, anybody that has tried to replace straps on these style of Casios will know it can be quite tricky. There's not a lot of room here just because of where it's designed, but this was perfect for this, and should hopefully last a little bit longer than the plastic straps, although this isn't a particularly high quality strap, and it has been, you can see it's been used already, but I thought it was quite a nice combination there. Obviously a black one would be nicer on here maybe, but I quite like that dark brown black sort of colour combination there. So yeah, nice little square analog quartz there that well, it didn't really cost me anything because I reclaimed my watch and repurposed the strap I already had. And then finally, this is probably my best find of the trip. So we spent the end of the trip 2-3 days in London. Seeing as we were over there, it was worth it. And on one of the days, we each normally pick a day, and then me and my wife pick a day, and we just plan out a day. And yeah, so for my day, it was just, I always like to wander around Hyde Park, go over to the museums. So we went over to where the Albert Hall is. Went to the Royal School of Music. They have an interesting display in there of old instruments, mainly keyboards actually. And then went down to the Science Museum and went in there, had a look at the technology section and the watchmaking section. And then didn't go into natural history, but crossed the road at the bottom. And across from there is South Kensington Books. And I discovered this. This was heavily discounted. I paid £9.99 for this. That's UK. And it was originally £30. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to sitting down with a nice beverage and going through this. Particular favourite period of mine in sort of British music, popular culture, Britpop and the 90s. Lovely photographs in here, and the format is fantastic in that it goes through literally year by year. And there's, I don't know how much verbiage there is in here, but you can see there's 3 or 4 in conversations here. Suede, Oasis, Echo Belly and Jean. Couldn't have picked 4 better bands really. Obviously there's no Blur here, but you know, that's as much as I like Blur, I was quite pleased to see both Echo Belly and Jean were included in here. And yeah, it just goes through obviously pictures of bands of the time. You know, beyond the interviews, obviously it features many bands from that period, but straight away, you know, recognising people here from Lush. We've got Blur in here. There's a number of photos of Blur, even if there's not a major interview with the members. That's Tim Burgess. Yeah, Tim Burgess is doing a lot of interesting work at the moment. He's got a series that he's been doing on Twitter, like a listening party. And he staged a real resurgence in terms of material, both in terms of the band that he's involved with, the Charlatans, and he's got 2 books out actually at the moment, and I did see both of them. I was tempted to purchase them, but I didn't have that much room in my suitcase. They're about the same size as this. I'll put this book end on, you can get an idea for the size. I'm trying here not... sorry the light's not great on here, but it's difficult balance between keeping it nice for when I actually sit down and have a read through. Oh wow, Sarah Cracknell from St Etienne. Yeah, this I haven't looked through this yet. I'm going to really enjoy this book. So yeah, I'd check out this online, because if it's been discounted at the book sellers, then it's quite possibly it's discounted on Amazon as well. It's wonderful. Oh, good old Brett Anderson. Oh, Dodgy, wow. The Auteurs. What was that big single they had? Married a Showgirl? So it's also got... So it does go beyond just bands that might be associated with Britpop, even though the term tends to get quite used a bit loosely. A lot of bands associated are more... associated like guitar-based bands, but I'm hoping there's other genres in here as well, and bands that have tried to distance themselves from the Britpop label. So I noticed there was a Radiohead in there as well. I've got some covers as well from the NME. This is the first time, this is my sort of first reaction. I should have called this a reaction to this particular book. I mean, most people that watch this channel will know that probably all my videos are generally spur of the moment reactions to things, in that, you know, I try and always do deliberately a minimum amount of planning for stuff, because I just like being exposed to things for the first time and seeing where it takes me, even though sometimes some of the videos, it can make them a little bit lumpy. But, oh, shampoo, crikey, yeah, I remember them. Oh no, we're in trouble, something's come along and burst our bubble. Elastica, that's a great debut album. More Blur, more Radiohead. Yeah, so you can see the verbiage is pretty minimal. Oh, look at these. From Sleeper. I wonder if there's going to be any... Oh, God. I'll know when I see it. Their name's on the tip of my tongue, but I don't know. Because of the fact that a lot of the band members were from the States, I don't know whether they're always featured in here. Manson, more Tim Burgess. Yeah, I really like Gene, the band. Oh, the Seahorses, that had an ex-member of Stone Roses in it. Kaniki, I think one of the members of Kaniki is now a well-respected broadcaster. Jarvis Cocker Pulp. Yeah, Pulp have been around for decades. Maybe, I don't know if anybody's interested in this. Or would any of the viewers be interested in me doing an episode on Pulp? And in terms of their exposure on like UK music shows, like, you know, how it looked from a UK perspective, and where was their music being played before they got really big during Britpop, because they were kicking around in the 80s. So yeah, I could probably do quite an interesting series on that. So there we have it. I think I'll stop there. So that book's called While We Were Getting High, Britpop in the 90s. Photography by Kevin Cummins. And we also had a look at, well, we haven't had a look at this, but I talked about it, and I'll do an unboxing of these later on, and this nice rediscovered watch. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I'll catch you in a future episode.